Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Focus Your Ads. Today we're going to be talking about ad groups because ad groups are more important than most people think. And I got my notes over here, so if you see me looking over here, that's why I'm looking at my notes. And just to keep us on track. So we're going to be talking about ad groups. We'll touch on campaigns a little bit, but really ad groups are an actually underrated item that we can use in Google Ads to really structure and help us improve our Google Ads. Everyone thinks of keywords as being like the most important part of Google Ads or search terms, but ad groups are one of those pieces to the puzzle that is really important to get right because it controls, essentially the biggest part of ad groups is it controls what kind of ad copy you're showing to your customers. And without this piece to the puzzle, really, you're not showing any ad copy to your customers because that is tied directly to your ads. So it's important to get this right. And so let's just dive right in about the actual structure of our ad groups. So I'm just going to move this over here a little bit so I can see it a bit better. And so first off, we want to talk about our the structure a little bit more here. So what kind of structure do we want when we're talking about ad groups? So there's different thoughts behind this, and some people go as far as what's called a SKAG. And in a lot of videos and a lot of, even if you're talking to Google on this topic, it's not a great strategy to go with a SKAG. Now, there is kind of a reason you could go with a SKAG on kind of a limited basis, like maybe if you wanted to try it with one or two keywords, but it's something you want to try to avoid if possible. Now, what a SKAG is a single keyword ad group. So this used to be a really important strategy or a really popular strategy back in the day because Google had a difference in the way that they showed you keywords. For example, if you had a keyword that said red car and you had that was your keyword, you're going to show up for the term red car. Now, in today's world, if you had red car, even exact match, you're probably going to show up for maybe a pink car, or you might show up for a red van, or you might show up for a red truck. Like, it's not going to be, there's no way to get that exact link between your keyword and the search term that people are actually searching for. So that's a big part of why SKAGs don't necessarily work anymore. They're also a huge amount of work for the person managing, and more often than not, what you're going to do is cause yourself to actually manage in a worse way. You're going to actually cause yourself to spend in areas that you shouldn't be spending, because now you're forcing the system to spend on a specific keyword that's not performing as well as another one. So you're forcing the system to go against what it's designed to do. And right now, Google is designed, and especially as we advance into the future here with AI and all this stuff happening, the system is advanced or is set up in a way that it should be able to help you get the right search term. So if you're looking for red car, it's going to help you not only get red car, but get stuff that's very similar to that. That's probably going to convert just as well as the term red car, even though I would imagine red car is not going to convert very well unless you're selling that beautiful red car. And even still, you want more context in that search. But beside the fact that I was using a horrible example, the idea remains that if you are using this technique called SKAGs, it's going to cause you to get more gray hair. It's going to also cause you to probably lose more money. So it's not a great strategy, but if you have to use it in very small doses. So what I mean by this is, if you want to try using a SKAG, try in like a single, just one keyword, and maybe use exact match for that keyword. Test it out. And the reason you'd want to try this is because you want to get more control over that single keyword. You want to also get more control over what's being said about that keyword. So if you have different ad copy that you want to try out with that keyword, then this could be something you could try. But again, I wouldn't stop there. So if I had this single keyword in this ad group, I probably wouldn't stop at one keyword in that ad group. I might try to see if I could find other variations of that same keyword. So now I'm not just using the SKAG technique of having a single keyword and single ad group. I'm now expanding that out and I'm actually building it properly. So I'm adding 5 more keywords that are similar to that stuff that would actually make sense to be in that same ad group and have that same ad copy. So I'm not just saying red car is in this one and reddish car is in this one over here. No, if I had red car and reddish car, and again, these are just bad examples, but if I combine those now, I'd put those in the same ad group because they're the same search term. People are searching for those, are looking for the same thing. So that's what, if I was going to use any kind of SKAG technique or something like that, that's what I would use it for, is kind of a starting point in an ad group, and then I would expand from there. So it's not going to be my end point. It's not where I'm going to be managing from. I'm going to use that as kind of a starting point, maybe get a few clicks in there, and then start to see what kind of keywords are coming out, what search terms coming, and expand it from there and start to grow that ad group a little bit more. You don't want to expand too much, but you want to keep, if you want to have that control, but you can at least have a few keywords in there and get a little more control with just kind of a limited amount of keywords. Now the other extreme is when someone adds one single ad group and they have everything in there. So they have everything. Their whole account is in one ad group. Now this can work, but it's also not a great strategy, because what you're doing is essentially saying all my keywords are of equal importance and they all fit with the same kind of ad copy. So if I want to have ad copy that's written about this red car, and then I have ad copy about a blue car or a different vehicle or a blue truck now, and I put that in the same, we're going to be talking about, you only have limited space to add in your ad copy. So now you have 15 headlines dedicated to mixing between your red car and that blue truck. So now you're mixing this, and you're going to get kind of a bad experience, especially when the AI system, maybe it's learning and it's trying to put the right kind of headlines in the right places, but now you're splitting things. So now it has to kind of work a lot harder to try to figure out what headlines match with what kind of ad copy and what keywords match with those headlines. It doesn't make sense. So you want to at least separate them out. And really the best way to do this is to separate them out by like themes. So for example, if you had the red car and the blue truck, those might be two different themes that you have. So you have terms that make sense for the red car, and your ad copy makes sense for that red car. Now you have a blue truck over here, and all your terms are around that blue truck. So you have different terms around the blue truck. You're talking about it, and it makes sense. Someone looking for a blue truck is now getting headlines that make sense for a blue truck, descriptions that make sense for a blue truck, and that ad is just tailored to that person. Same with the red car. It's all ads tailored to that person. And now we can have maybe 5-10 different keywords in each of those ad groups. And then I would continue to split things out. I'd be looking at search terms. So you're always looking for search terms and seeing, okay, well, this search term doesn't really make sense for the red car one. So why don't we pull that search term out? And by pulling it out, I mean just add it in as a different ad group as its own keyword, and now we start a new ad group. So now we have, maybe it's orange, maybe we have orange cars in there. So now we have another ad group that's orange cars. Again, this is a pretty generic batch of keywords we're using here, but I wanted to just use this simple keywords so we could kind of get the idea of what we're doing here. All right, so let's move on. We've kind of talked about what not to do, but if we were to kind of simplify it again, we don't want to just add in SKAG type of a setup like that. So you have a single keyword for every ad group. You can use automated systems to do this. You're just going to cause yourself headaches. And if you ever get to the point where you're now using automated bidding, you're just causing yourself to have to do a lot more work, and you're essentially defeating the system. You want to make sure you're working with the system, and having multiple keywords in an ad group is going to help you work with that system, because you can now adjust like your target CPA at that ad group, and it's going to allow you to adjust kind of at that group. If you want to go down further, you can adjust things at the keyword level, not with target CPA, but with other manual bidding and stuff like that. So anyways, I think it helps to really simplify your work. It helps you to get more out of your work if you're grouping different sets of keywords into different ad groups rather than just going with a single keyword ad group, or having everything lumped into one giant ad group. So those would be ways that I wouldn't want to do it. Those are things I wouldn't want to do when I'm running my ad groups, is have that giant group or the single ad group. And you kind of want to go in between. Like I said, the big one would be having themes. It's how someone's searching. You can also, another one here, I'll just kind of go off script a bit here, but another area that, or I'm not even on a script, but you know what I mean. Another area that, another thing you can do with your ad groups is actually have them separate out by risk. So if you have a really high risk search terms or keywords in there. So for example, you want to try out some broad match, and maybe red car is broad match in there, and it's just 2 word broad match. That's a pretty risky term. So that might be in its own ad group, and you might have some other terms in there that are broad match or even phrase match, but they're pretty risky terms, right? There's not a ton of context to that. But now you have another ad group that's a little more focused. So instead of red car, you have, let's say, a buy used red car or used Corvette, something like that. It's actually specific to that type of car. There's a lot more detail in there, a lot more context, and now you can actually tailor your ad to that. But you can see that those are completely separate in risk, because if red car is a search term, yes, you might get someone looking for a red Corvette, but probably not. And but you're also going to get a lot of different search terms, and Google's going to be able to really explore the search terms in there and give you a lot of different variations. Whereas if we were talking about an exact match and you're talking about red Corvette and you had like the model number and all this, the year of it, that's going to be very specific to that vehicle. And you're now going to probably pay a premium for that click, but you know that person is looking for that car. Whereas red car, you don't know if that person's looking for that car. So you want to control the risk of that. So with manual bidding, you can now bid down on the red car keywords or in the ad group there. And with automated bidding, if you're using, say, a cost per acquisition or a target ROAS type of bidding strategy, you can now adjust the target cost per acquisition for each of those in the ad group, and now you can control the risk and control how much you're spending in each of those. So that is another really important idea for ad groups. It's not only to control what kind of ad copy is being put out there, but it's also control how much you're willing to spend and how much risk you're willing to take on with those different ad groups. And this is how you can control not really the budget, but control the risk inside a campaign. So this is how you can get away without separating everything into a separate campaign. So you don't necessarily need to have a separate campaign for everything. This allows you to control that risk within there, even if you're using automated bidding. Now, when it comes to campaigns, though, say for example, what would be the reason you'd want to actually go with a campaign? So if you're instead of an ad group, if you want to go with a campaign, there's a few different reasons for this. One would be that you want to control the budget directly. So you want to actually take the budget and say, I want to only pay this much, $10 per day on this campaign, and I want to spend $20 per day on this campaign. And maybe they're 2 different, like we're talking about the vehicles. So maybe it's 2 different vehicles. One has a better profit margin than the other one, or you're more likely to sell this one. So let's spend a little bit more money on that one. This is where having a separate campaign can come in handy. Another good reason to have a separate campaign is that you want to actually separate it out by region. Now you can't separate ad groups out by region, so you can do this in a campaign. So if you wanted to have, say you had one, maybe your international business, and you have one section or one area of your business is focusing on the United States, and then you have another area of your business focusing all on Canada. You could separate this out. So you could have one campaign designated to Canada, one designated to the United States, or you can even do this at a smaller scale. So if you have one state or one province, you can actually separate these out, or one area, specific area around a city. You can separate this out, so that way you can control where you want to spend your money. And that could be important if you have multiple locations. Say if you're a service business and you have multiple locations around, now you can control the amount you want to spend in each of those locations, because maybe one is a bigger location, maybe you have more staff working there, so you want to spend a little bit more in that location, you want to spend a little bit less in the other location. This allows you to kind of separate things out and get the most out of your campaigns. But again, you can't do that at the ad group level, so this has to go all the way up to the campaign level. Same with you if you were going to be separating out times of day. So if you want to run a certain time of day, or what I've done in some cases is, say we want to run, say we have less staff working on the weekends, right? We have more staff during the weeks, we have less on the weekends. So we could separate out the weekday campaign and the weekend campaign. So we now have two campaigns running. One is going to be set at a certain budget and the other one's going to be set at a different budget. And that allows us to spend more during the week and less on the weekends. We still want to spend on the weekends, but we want to spend less because we have less staff working. So we don't want to take on quite as much business on the weekend. So this is a good way to separate it out. So again, that comes down to using the campaigns. If you're using manual bidding, you can do this by doing bid adjustments. But if you're using automated bidding, you have to have a separate campaign to actually make this happen. So those are some really important ways of separating out, or I guess those are like the differences between an ad group and a campaign. Because some of the things you just can't do at the ad group level, and you have to do at the campaign level. So let's just take a look here and see what else we have. So what to do. So grouping by theme or by intent. So again, we talked about that, grouping by themes, by intent, or by the risk would be ways to group your ad groups. And again, there's no magic number saying, oh, we have to have 5 keywords in this ad group, 5 in this one. No, it doesn't really matter. You can have 10, 20, 30 keywords in an ad group. It's fine as long as they all match or all follow the same, as long as they all make sense for that ad group. So if you are trying to control the risk, as long as they all fit into that group and you're not running maybe one big broad match, single word broad match keyword with some other keywords that have a whole lot of context and they're completely separate risk, right? So you want to separate things out in a smart way that's controlling that risk, making sure they're themed properly, that your ad copy is going to make sense. And again, with ad copy as well, think of it from the customer's point of view. You want to make sure it's a smooth experience from the time they search. So the keywords that are in there, the person searching should search and find your ad with the keywords, and that should match the ad copy, or at least have a good experience when they see that ad copy. It should make sense for them to now click on the ad copy, and when they get to your website, they should also have a good experience, and it should all be kind of in line. There shouldn't be this where you have a broad keyword in there and they're coming in from, let's say, the red car, and now they go to your ad which talks about a blue car, and they click on that because they're like, well, maybe it's true, and then they go to your website and now there's an orange car. It doesn't really make sense. You want to have it all the way through. You want to make sure that it's clear all the way through. That red car, if that's your theme, and that's the kind of our running theme in this episode, but if we had that red car there, we want to make sure that they type in something about a red car. We now talk about a red car in our ad copy, and then on our website we send them to a page that talks about the red car, and that way it's a smooth experience for them. They're happy to kind of go through that whole experience, and there's no disconnect there at all. Now, another thing you can do, we talked about risk. So keeping with the risk, you don't necessarily need to say that, okay, broad match is always risky, because broad match isn't always risky. So you could have a broad match that's less risky than an exact match. Because say, for example, you have car exact match. That's a really risky term. Now, if you had red convertible Corvette, and you had the model, and you had maybe some more information, and even if that's broad match, that is far less risky than car as exact match. So just keep that in mind, that just match types don't equal risk. They certainly help make the risk, like improve the risk or make it worse. Like for example, if you put broad match on anything, it certainly adds more risk to that keyword, but it doesn't necessarily make it a risky keyword. Same with phrase match. Phrase is kind of in between, and but adding phrase is going to add a little more risk compared to exact, and exact is going to have the least amount of risk for the keyword match type, but it doesn't mean that just because it's exact match that it's not risky. You're going to have to make sure that there's context in that search. So the person actually typing in is looking and adding enough information into that search that makes sense, right? And the same can be done in phrase match. Phrase is a good place to start as well, because you're kind of in the middle. You can tighten things up from there, or you can loosen things up depending on what you see. So anyways, just don't associate phrase or just the match type with risk, right? So you don't want to necessarily have ad groups sectioned off by match type. Like you don't want to have the exact match type and the phrase match type and or in different ad groups is what I mean. Like you have you're thinking beyond that. Just because you have phrase match, just because you have broad match, doesn't mean it's going to be risky. It can still be, those can still bring you in great search terms if there's enough context in them to do so. So risk isn't always match. Like match types doesn't equal risk is what I'm trying to say. Let's see what else we have here going on. So we already talked about when to split into separate campaigns. That's going to be due to your budget, your targeting, like where you want to target. You can also split into different campaigns if you need a different bidding strategy. Say, for example, you're running a branded campaign, and branded's usually a good one to have in a separate campaign, partly because you just want to control branded traffic to make sure that it's working for you. You don't want to overspend it, and you don't really want to mix it with the other stuff, because it's going to be very high converting traffic. And by branded, what I mean is anything that has your brand name in it. So if you're Apple and you have Apple, if you're targeting the keyword Apple, then you're likely going to bring in a lot of high converting traffic, because people already know your brand. They're already coming there for that. So if you are looking at going after branded traffic, just make sure it's in a separate campaign. That way you can control the budget on it. You can see it separately, and that way it's not kind of over inflating the results from your other campaigns, because that's another thing to keep in mind is if you mix things up, you're over inflating the results from something else, or you're under inflating it, or would that be inflating? Anyways, you're under reporting, I guess, the results if you're just skewing the results is what I mean. If you have either the branded in with something else, and the same thing, that's why we have separate ad groups as well for reporting. It also helps with reporting, because if you have tons of branded traffic coming in through one ad group and you have something else coming through in another ad group, it's just going to mix up your reporting, and you're not going to know where you should be putting your money. You're not going to know what to do next. So this is why it's so important to have these separate ad groups, separate campaigns, and just kind of structure things properly. Okay, so I think that's about it. I think the first thing is to always just make sure your structure is on par, that you have a nice setup with ad groups. You're not going into SKAGs, at least not in mass, and you're not going the other direction where you have a list of keywords, just hundreds of keywords that don't really make sense for an ad group. Keep them so every ad group has a purpose, whether that's to control the risk or to make sure the ad copy makes sense for those keywords. The ad copy should always make sense for those keywords. So that's definitely an important thing, even when you're controlling the risk. But again, you can also use them for controlling risk, also for helping yourself look at the reporting. And that's why a lot of people will go with a SKAG type of keyword, because they want to see the reporting for that single keyword. But again, I caution you with that. Just if you're going to use it very, very sparingly, maybe one keyword, and just to test it out. But again, if once you have that keyword in there, I would still look at expanding that to having more keywords in there. So I think that's about it. So if you guys had any questions, or if there's anything about ad groups you want to know more about, or campaigns that you want me to talk about, anything else in Google Ads, I like to just kind of ramble on in these podcasts, so hopefully that's all right with you guys. And but if you did enjoy it, hit that thumbs up if you're on YouTube. And looks like my camera just reset there. But yeah, if you enjoyed it, hit that thumbs up on YouTube. If you're on the podcast, I would appreciate a review and or even a comment on YouTube as well. And if you guys want to work together, if you enjoy my podcast, you'll probably enjoy working with me because this is how I work with my clients, then feel free to reach out to me at support@focusyouраds.com, or just go to our website. So it's focusyouраds.com, and you can fill out the form on our website. And I would look forward to chatting with you. Thanks. Okay, take care. Bye.